Hello, and thank you for joining me. This is the second proper episode in the mental health live stream. Currently, it's only on Twitch, but I upload these to YouTube also. And I'm thinking about putting them up on Facebook as well. I might even use a service to restream it to like Facebook at the same time, and maybe YouTube if I can. I don't know. I'll look into that, but generally it's going to be on here on Tuesdays and Fridays currently. I think the Friday one is scheduled for 7 p.m. UK time. Although I might move that to an hour later to let people come home and, have dinner and things like that. Because this is why I've got one on Friday at the end of the week after the working week for people that work. So we've got that. Hopefully, I played back the sound or played back the recording I made of the first stream, and that was clipping. And I'm just having a look here. Main video. Let me just have a little nosy. Hold on. I think it was due to, I've got no filters on it. So it is literally just the sound from the microphone. Let's get back to where's Twitch gone? It's crazy. I've got so many profiles on it. Right, there we are. Scene. Right, back to normal. Okay, it looks like whatever I did took the time off. Anyway, let's not chat about miscellaneous stuff. This is all about mental health, especially for people with autism, but for anyone in general. Welcome to the room, and if you've got any questions, do let me know. My mental health has been made an awful lot worse due to the COVID experience of the last 2 years. My anxiety was bad beforehand, and it was made even worse by all these restrictions that people weren't following. I know, yeah, people were following them generally, but it's not the people following that gives me anxiety. It's people not following the rules. There could be 1,000,000 people following the rules, and one person would cause me anxiety. Because why should I be following the rules and everyone else should be following the rules if some people get away with not following the rules? Anyway, I was going to talk to you about some books. Let me just show you what books I've got. When I got diagnosed with Asperger's in 2011, I instantly went on to Amazon and bought some books. Living with Asperger's Syndrome, What You Must Think of Me, a first-hand account of one teenager's experience with social anxiety disorder, Overcoming Social Anxiety, and basically something that describes autism. Autism and Asperger's Syndrome by Simon Baron-Cohen, The Facts. Now, to do this properly, I really am going to have to reread those books. So what I'm going to do is, for Friday, I'm going to read one book and give you a review. Because one of these actually describes, I think, it must be Asperger's Syndrome, Living with Asperger's Syndrome. So I'll read that one and I'll explain it to you on Friday. One of them actually goes through and gives you like little examples of what people go through with Asperger's. And it says, Johnny says this, and, Susan did that, and blah, blah, blah. And it was literally going through everything that happened to me as a kid. But there we are. So I will be going through 4 books over the next 4 weeks. I'm going to do one book a week. I'll probably do it on a Friday. I was going to do it on Tuesdays, but I'll probably do it on a Friday so that more people can sit down and relax. If Friday's the wrong day for most people, then I'll move it to another day, Saturday or Sunday maybe. But I was thinking Friday after work, after a long week, after anything, we'll sort it out on Friday. So there we are. Friday book club sort of thing. Today, what should we talk about today? Right, anxiety. Let's have a little chat about anxiety. On a personal level, I've been suffering with anxiety since I was a young child. It comes in all sorts of forms with me. There's anxiety about crowds, anxiety about surprises and sudden events, anxiety about public events. There's even anxiety about going to restaurants and cafes. And restaurants, not so much, but cafes. I don't know whether you sit down and it's a waitress service or waited on service. I don't know what the politically correct version of it is now. But I don't know whether it's a weighted service or you go and pick your food up from the counter and go and sit down, or you go and order from the counter and go and sit down. It would help people like me and people with autism generally if you went into cafes and before you went in, there was a note on the window saying what type of cafe it was, or even what type of restaurant. Whether it was a sit down and people come to you restaurant, or you order and it gets delivered to you, or you order and you take it to your table yourself. I think they're the three main types of restaurants. So it would be nice if things like that were done so that people with autism and anxiety can cut the anxiety and the autism effects down. There's enough going on in life without having worries about worrying. And I remember when I was a kid, actually, how does one put this? I used to, maybe not when I was a kid, because I never used to go out when I was a child, but I used to, when I was working, have stress near the end of the week. And it was multiple stress because I used to stress about not being invited out and being left alone on Friday after everyone was going off to the pub or something. And I used to stress about being invited out. I used to get stressed both ways. Being left alone and no one wanting me, or being invited out and not knowing how to behave in public. So it was a no-win, no-win situation with me. So I would rather stress about going out and worrying about how people would react than having the stress of being left alone and all that stuff going on inside my head. But it has been going on, I would say, since my mum died when I was 6, but I'm sick of repeating that. As far as I can remember, I think I even got stressed before my mum died. I used to have anxiety about everything. That's why I used to spend most of my time alone. When I weren't at school, I used to spend most of my time alone upstairs in my bedroom, just listening to the radio. I grew up on London Broadcasting. Occasionally Capital Radio when I got sick of people's voices, but back in my era when I was growing up, it was Jerry and Beadle and Tommy Boyd. They were the main people, and in the mornings, it used to be Steve Jones or someone. Mr. Grumpy, they used to call him at LBC because he wasn't grumpy, but he came across as quite abrupt. And I can't remember for the life of me what his name was, but I loved listening to him. There we go, let's sort that out. So anxiety is a debilitating illness. It's like a virtual prison for people. And I say that having been through it for years with myself. So children can get anxiety about everything. And if nothing's done to relieve that anxiety when you're a child, it goes on and on and on, and it gets worse and worse and worse. Fortunately, nowadays it is getting easier to assist children and young people to overcome. Everyone gets anxious about things, but it's not an unnatural anxiety, but a not logical anxiety. It's hard to explain, but having anxiety about having anxiety, it's hard to describe to people that don't have it. And yet I still get it. I get anxiety about having anxiety, if it makes any sense to you. And that is the worst of all the disabilities, is the disabilities that we force on ourselves mentally, that is hard to help with, because it is in your head. You are causing all the disability, but there's nothing you can do personally. It's my disabilities and anxieties are caused by others triggering it, especially after, for instance, if I've explained I get panic attacks and anxiety about private phone calls and I can't take them, and people still, knowing that, call me on private numbers. To me, it's like an assault. I class it as abuse, and yet when I use that term, people sort of like shy away. And yet, how else would you describe it? If people keep harming you, knowing that what they're doing is harming you, is that not really abuse? Sorry, I keep looking over there, make sure that the picture looks fine as far as I can see on the screen. See, I get anxiety about how the picture and the sound is as well. So hopefully the sound comes across a bit better this time. Nope. Try to keep Caspi off the desk while I'm doing this. I've got a proper condenser microphone, but that picks up too many sounds in the background, so I basically use this, and it helps cut all the noise out. Sorry, got to move the cat away from the power button before he turns me off again. Oh, he did that yesterday in the middle of a stream. Um, my anxiety levels currently. I've lived with anxiety for so long, it's hard to say exactly how bad the anxiety is because it becomes part of life now for me. I've not left my flat in 4 weeks now because of reasons. And I've got about 17, 18 bags of rubbish in the hallway, which you can't see. It's just beyond that door there. I've been ringing round. Everyone I call tells me to contact council. And I've contacted council. You cannot talk to anyone at Waltham Forest Council. Or you can get through to not social services, contact centre. And they just send an email. They literally don't put you through to anyone. So people with anxiety and autism have no access to services anymore. I have raised this up with the Levelling Up Ministry, and I am in discussions with them currently, although they're taking their sweet time, because the people that are supposed to be standing up for disabled people and people's housing needs and rights, the Levelling Up Ministry of Housing and Culture, they haven't got a clue how to make a non-privatised phone call when they're working from home. And yet I was setting these systems up 15 years ago. So, they've had 12 years since the Equality Act. So it's about time they sorted it out, basically. So I've got a complaint with the Levelling Up Ministry going through because, if they can't get it right, then who will get it right? And even then, they forced me to put a complaint in writing. They wouldn't take it over the phone. That's just ridiculous. I mean, I know people are cutting down on the amount of live telephone support. One, because they get 10 days to answer a written question. And two, because it means they only need people taking messages and emailing that across. But according to the ministry 2 weeks ago, they are supposed to have telephone contact for people that don't like or can't use electronic forms of communication. Look at me. I prefer streaming and creating YouTube videos. Yes, I can do emails, and yes, I can do other forms of electronic communication, but it takes me a lot longer. For instance, I've been waiting 2 weeks now for a callback regarding replacing the doors because there's a project going on. It's taken me 2 weeks to go through my voicemails or my voice recordings of the telephone calls because it's the only way I'll get any services from Waltham Forest Council. If you can't prove that they've done something wrong, they deny it. And yes, I've checked with the Information Commissioner. You are allowed to record your phone calls. You don't need to tell the other person you're recording. You are allowed to record your phone calls. And it's a bit rich from councils to say, oh, no, we're not going to talk to you because you record our phone calls when they record your phone calls. Or at least they tell you they're recording them. So I believe in a fair society where, people can be trusted, where public servants have honour again, and what they say is what they do. And what's on paper and what's electronically written down is what they carry out. But I've discovered over the years that councils and public bodies will put down in writing one thing and do something totally different or say something totally different on the phone. So that's why I encourage everyone to record all your phone calls. I use a software called Automatic Call Recorder, and it seems to work quite well for me. I really don't think we should have to do this though. But then, if we don't do it, people with autism don't get any services unless you're under 25 or 21, and then you do. I don't know. It's just people with mental health issues have it so much more difficult in life to get their rights than someone with a missing limb or a physical obvious disability. And I noticed this about 3 years ago. I had pain. I've still got pain in my hip, but it was debilitating to the extent that I had to buy a stick off Amazon. And the difference was night and day. When I was walking, before I bought the stick, I was going out walking in pain. And no one would give a seat up to me on the bus or the train. And yet, as soon as I started using the stick, I started getting, do you want to sit down? Do you want my seat? All that sort of stuff. Because my injury was apparent. And yet, if we were all kind to people, and we all noticed what people were doing and how they were looking, then you wouldn't need an obvious sign like a stick. You would just see someone in pain and ask them, are they all right? Do you need a seat? Or something like that. But there's no honour in society anymore with a lot of people. I'm not saying everyone, but the majority of people in society just don't have any common sense or any respect for others around them. Of course, that leads into people like us getting more anxiety about going out, because then we get anxious about if people are going to treat us badly or if people are going to abuse us. There's certain things we end up doing when we go out because we're upright, decent citizens, most of us. And people with autism have to say things. There's no social filter. If we see someone doing something wrong, we will, go over to them and tell them. And that's when the anxiety starts, because we don't know how other people are going to take it. I mean, generally, society is confrontational adverse. And really, it's not about even confrontation. It's just about, you know, how 50 or 60 years ago people had morals and standards and ethics in social situations, and people would step, several people at any one time would step in if they saw something happening that was wrong. Now there's no ethics or morals with people in public. And it's like, well, it's not affecting me. I'll walk by. And yet I can't do that. If I see something, and if people with autism and people like me see something happening that's wrong, we will put ourselves in harm's way. And we don't even think about it. At the time, it's like, were they doing something wrong? I have to intervene. And we don't think about how dangerous it might be. Because in society, you shouldn't have to think about how dangerous things are for you personally. It should come down to whether that person can stand up for themselves and whether they need you to intervene. And if you see someone getting attacked or bullied or abused, generally that means they can't defend themselves as well as you probably could. So people like us intervene. And people don't like intervention. The people that you intervene on their behalf of do, generally. It's the people that are doing the bullying and the intimidation that don't. And they tell you to keep your nose out of it, or to, walk on, or take a hike, or whatever it is. And this don't involve you, don't get involved, that sort of stuff. And it's a right cheek for people that are doing this to other people to say it doesn't involve you, move on. And that just winds, people like me up even more, because that to me says, well, it's a good job I did get involved. And now later on in life, it comes down to I have to stand up for people that haven't got the wherewithal to stand up for themselves. And so for the last few years now, I've been highlighting to public organisations exactly where they're letting people with disabilities and autism down. And most of them don't want to know, because most of them have no respect, actually no respect for people with autism or mental health issues. Yes, on paper, they do. They've got all the policies and procedures in place, but those policies and procedures are not implemented and are ignored by most public bodies that I've come across so far. I will give you a shout out to the NHS England, because they've got decent procedures and decent customer services, and you don't need to ask for, a call back on a non-private number more than once. They just make a note of it and they call you back on a non-private number. A lot of the time, they call you back on a non-private number anyway, whether you ask for it or not. So NHS England, thank you very much. Especially, I mean, I've spoken to a few people up there, but my last case was dealt with by Natalie, and she was so good, clear, precise, and professional. So thank you, Natalie, at NHS England, wherever you are. Councils, another issue, because they seem to use the excuse we have no money. And I'm sorry, that does not wash in law when you're obliged, and you have been for 12 years, with Section 149 of the 2010 Equality Act, the public sector equality duty, to eliminate discrimination on various grounds, including mental health and disability. and to encourage good practices of communication with people with mental health and to stop threats and bullying. Well, Waltham Forest Council are not meeting their PSED at all. Actually, on paper, yes, they are. But actually, in real life, they're avoiding it because it's going to cost them too much money to implement. I am sorry, but councils can spend thousands on cultural celebrations for what they call BAME community, I think now. But they can't put into practice something which really won't cost anything. Sorry, I keep getting attacked by my cat. I'm talking, Caspi. He's a good lad, but when I'm streaming, he just wants to sit right here. Even when I'm not streaming, if I'm trying to do something, he wants to sit right here. I do love him, but Caspi, come on. I'll get him on the. This is why there's chair here, because I put Caspi on it. There we are. See? And he'll sit down there because he's next to his dad. No, sit down. He'll sit down there, and I might get a different microphone for doing these streams. I'll see how the sound comes out. But you see, this is why I don't want the cat in front of me because of the hairs. I end up rubbing my nose all the time. Good boy, Caspi. See, he's sitting down there now, next to his dad. The other two, I'm not too sure where they are. Merlin's asleep on the pillow in the bedroom, and the other one's probably underneath the sofa where he normally goes. So let's get back to where we were. Anxiety. Yes, let's talk about anxiety. Anxiety with me got worse as I got older. I'm not sure if that's for everyone, but I used to get anxious about literally everything. I used to get anxious about going shopping. I used to get anxious about paying for the stuff. I used to get anxious about staying home, and especially when I was a kid, because I didn't go out very much when I was a kid. 3 times, I think, in like up until the age of 16 or 17. Because I used to get anxiety about going out on my own, and I used to get anxious at home about being beaten by my dad. What else did I used to get anxious about? Oh, crowds. Romford, going shopping at Romford Market was always a trauma for me. I always had to take little breaks every now and then, darting into a shop because I couldn't stand all the crowds. Occasionally, I'd dart into a coffee shop or, a cafe or something like that and sit down. Or sometimes I'd get off the main market and go into a side market and shop in there just to recover. I would need to sit down all the time. Christmas shopping, nightmare, couldn't do it. I have tried Romford several times going there at Christmas time. And yes, I could do it, but it was so stressful and it was just tiring, very tiring. So that was as a kid. As I got older and I didn't think that anyone wanted to. Oh, hello, viewer. I've got a viewer suddenly. Hello, viewer. Say something in the chat if you are in the stream, just so I know who you are and where you are. So shopping was a problem. It's been a blessed, relief to have online shopping available, especially over the last 2 or 3 years, as my anxiety's got worse. Dating, always anxious. I mean, I suppose most people are, but I used to get anxious about if it was weird because I had no friends to talk to about advice and that. So I didn't know whether I looked all right or whether I was dressing a bit weird or my hair was weird or what I was doing was strange, I had one chance and one chance only. Because if I was being odd, shall we say, then normally the person I was going on a date with wouldn't tell you, they just wouldn't come back. Or they'd ignore your messages and things like that. And so I would literally go through multiple dates, not knowing why I was going through multiple dates or what I was doing wrong, because people aren't respectful enough to actually say, well, I didn't like this or didn't like that. They just think it's easier if they just let you get on making the same mistakes for years and years and years. And it's going to be more harmful if you actually get told, well, you have got a funny twitch or you dress a bit weird or your language is odd. And I've had all that in my life, ranging from you dress like an old man, when I was in my 20s, you dress like an old man, to your language sounds very posh. I'm sorry, I don't think I sound posh. But I do hate anxiety. Out of everything, if I could get rid of anxiety tomorrow, I would. But the only way I can see of getting rid of my anxiety is to change the people around me. I have tried and tried and tried, but I can't keep anyone, apart from Mary, I can't keep anyone in touch with me. Yes, I can if I put the effort in and communicate with them constantly. But if I don't communicate with people constantly, then they don't talk to me at all. My family is a typical example. Even recently, when I reached out to them, they didn't help me. So, this is why I say I've got no family and no friends, with the exception of one cousin and one friend in Dagenham. It might as well be no family and no friends for all intents and purposes. I have to be careful when I sit up because, the cat's down below my feet and often I go to tread on one of their toes. But thankfully there's no one here at the moment. Must put, right, bear with me a moment. Sorry. My sleep pattern is all over the place at the moment due to the anxiety about the rubbish and not going out and struggling to find anyone to help me. Even social services, I got a call from them yesterday and I've asked for their manager to call me back and they haven't called me back yet. But then I've had to put a complaint in about not having a call back last week and I've had to put a complaint in about not having a call back the week before from other departments. And the council will say, well, we've written to him or we've emailed him. Yes, but people like me need to hear, we need two-way conversation. People are entitled to two-way conversation. Councils generally have taken the attitude, well, if we write to these people from a non-reply email address, then we can tell them without getting inundated with emails. I think no-reply email addresses should be outlawed, especially for public organisations, because for people with mental health, getting a one-way communication, which in effect it is, I get them from my GP as well, text messages that you can't reply back to. Getting those communications create more anxiety. Because if you don't understand something in the email, for instance, you can't email back. And then all you can do is get through to someone on the contact centre and they can email on your behalf. But why can't you just email back the person that sent you the email? Oh, because it generates a lot of work. Tough. Don't send the emails out if you don't want the work. I mean, if your emails are not making sense to a lot of people and they get frustrated and don't get access to services, that's a breach of Section 149 of the 2010 Equality Act, Public Sector Equality Duty. I'm currently waiting for callbacks from the Disability Law Service, who think there might be 3 cases to be taken up. So I've got more chance with them than I did with civil legal advice. This needs to be sorted permanently for all people in my situation. I was reading up yesterday on internet about people classed as hoarders. And you read the story, and it's people with anxiety that can't go out, so therefore agoraphobia, and are in the same situation as me. But because councils are refusing to apply services across the board and are picking and choosing which disabled people they assist, then people like me in flats don't get services because, oh, well, you're in a flat, we can't apply this service to a house. No, that's not what the law says. The law doesn't give public organisations exemptions from the PSED because people are in flats. It applies across the board to all disabled people. It doesn't say with the exception of people in flats. And social services, in my book, are wrong in applying a filter, as it were. If you've got mental health support, then social services won't get involved. Well, that's not allowed for in law either. Because mental health support can only support you with mental health, not with your counsel needs. And social services is there for that. So, slowly but surely, I think we are changing the system. Between me and Mind and Shelter and, in part, the National Autistic Society, things are moving forward. But it's very slow considering we've had, rights in place since 2010. I think June 2010. It should have already been in place. Like, at least a year later, everything should have been there. But the problem is, unlike local government and housing, there is no ombudsman for disability rights and needs. It's sort of shared between those two ombudsmen, but most of the time we fall in the crack in between them. For example, because I'm a because I'm a council tenant, the local government ombudsman will have nothing to do with me. They see it as a housing issue. And yet, the housing ombudsman will have nothing to do with disability and care because that's a local government issue. So I constantly fall in the gap. The best way of dealing with this, I think, is to have a minister for equality, or not a minister for equality, an ombudsman for equality. And I'm not talking about the Equality Advice and Support Service. I mean someone with powers to intervene, where you don't have to raise a complaint all the time to the council first. A service where you can call them up for advice and they can state clearly for people with needs that are, empowered by the 2010 Equality Act. They can intervene on your behalf and ask councils and public bodies directly how they are meeting their obligations under the PSED by not providing services as requested. It shouldn't be up to people that have got mental health issues to go through the complaints procedure and, going. It's a struggle. Even though I'm using Resolver, it's a struggle for me to keep on top of all the complaints because Waltham Forest are failing left, right, and centre. Every time I contact the council, there's a failure somewhere. Nearly every time. I had to review some of my phone recordings for the last couple of weeks this morning. And out of the last couple of weeks, there's only a handful of calls that have actually been professional and where someone has taken the effort to try and assist me because I've got issues. The majority of the time, if I contact my council, and I've tried other councils and they're equally as bad, so don't think it's only Waltham Forest. I have tried other councils to see what services they're running, and 9 times out of 10, it is telephone to email only. You can't talk or get put through directly to a person. So all council services are delayed by 10 days if they take action within the 10 days. You can't just call someone and get through to the person that sent you the letter, for instance. And it's so frustrating for people with mental health issues when all we know that it would take a 5 or 10 minute phone call, and as long as people did what they told you over the phone, then it would all be sorted. And most of the time, it would resolve an awful lot of other complaints if they just sorted it out once. For example, I can imagine an awful lot of councils receiving complaints about not understanding communications, emails and letters based on what I've seen coming out of councils. Because I think a lot of the time, emails and communications in general are badly worded because a lot of the people don't use English as a primary language. And I'm not being racist in saying that. You can tell by the way that sentences and paragraphs are formed that they're using the constructs of another language, because it isn't even constructed like an English language construction. You can see how they're placing nouns and verbs in a sentence. At least I can, because I've studied languages as well over the years. It's been like a pastime of mine. I've been fascinated by languages. Considering we all came out of Africa, how are there sort of like thousands of languages on the planet now? It's really strange to me how we've developed so many different and varied languages. So it has been a pastime to me, an interest that I've watched documentaries and read up about it. So I can tell when English is being created via a translator app, or it's being created by someone that doesn't use English as a primary language. And I mean, on a day-to-day basis amongst friends and family, because what you do at work and what you do in the rest of your life are totally different. What I've come to find out is, yes, people can talk English at work, but if they're not using English as a primary language amongst their family at home, then they don't get to practice and correct themselves, especially if they never got taught English correctly in the first place. If they've learned English off TV and things like that, then their level of English, in my opinion, is not good enough for public-facing roles. I do think there should be a good level of English for anyone on a telephone, public-facing. It should be what used to be classed as grade C and above. But because all the grades have changed around and you've got all these A stars and all that, I think the level of English for people that are customer-facing and writing and communicating with members of the public should be grade B and above, GCSE. And that would cut down an awful lot of anxiety and an awful lot of complaints just by improving the level of English. Because it is quite frustrating for people like me that know how English should be used, even though I'm chopping and changing here. Even basic communications gets misinterpreted by people that don't understand what you're saying. Even though they are using English, they're not using it well or well enough to communicate. And the thing that I've discovered recently that a lot of communication is let down by is listening skills. It's not about what you write and what you say, it's what you react to. If you can't listen to a customer and react to what they're saying, and instead you just ignore what they're saying and read from basically a script, then there's no point in the customer contacting you because you're not listening to them. Communication starts with listening first. If you're not going to listen, you might as well not have a phone, because that's what a phone is there for, to listen and react. If all you want to do is tell people what they can and can't do, then you just need to put posters up and flyers and things like that. Don't pretend to have an accessible service by having a telephone service and then having people on the phone that, one, can't communicate effectively in the English language, and two, can't listen effectively. Because you need both of those. You need effective communication in English and effective listening. And in all the weeks and weeks I've been doing videos and listening to call recordings, there aren't many people at Waltham Forest Council that can tick both boxes. I've got one I need to put a compliment in for, that I've got a call recording down here that helped me last week. And she was effective, she listened, she reacted, and that's all I need. That's all people with autism need. People listen and react to what's said. 9 times out of 10, you say something and the person at the other end of the phone says, we don't do that, when the day beforehand they did. So unless people can prove that you're lying, they should accept what you're saying as verbatim, not just go by what they've been told. If people have got different experiences to what people on the customer services have been told is on offer, then customer service should say, oh, I've never heard of that. Okay, I'll accept your word for it. Or words to that effect. Not, well, we don't do that, when they did the day beforehand actually do that. I've had that from the NHS as well, the PCSE. They said they don't talk to people, and yet 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, they definitely talked to me. We don't talk to customers directly. Well, one, that's got to be a breach of the public service equality duty, because if NHS England are telling you to contact PCSE, then yes, they should be contacting you directly. Then you get told, oh, they're not public facing, they will only send you an email. Well, that's not meeting the PSED either, because if you can't use electronic communications, you have to be provided with an accessible service. I need to go through that phone recording as well and raise that up with PCSE England. So this is what my life has become. Belligerent, and as I come across people not meeting the PSED, I raise complaints and I highlight the fact. I've got to chase the police again because I had another one going last year about that, and I've got no idea where that. I mean, the person that was investigating various complaints wasn't investigating that one, I discovered. So I need to ring up the police again and put a formal complaint in again and find out what happened to the one I put in. Look at me rambling on. It's 56 minutes, I think. Yeah, 56 minutes. So I'm going to have to start winding this up in a moment, boys and girls. Oh, I think the viewer might be me. I've just suddenly twigged. I've got one viewer on Twitch at the moment. I think that's me watching the stream back. Make sure it's all there still. I must admit, this PC I bought off Amazon, an all-in-one, not an all-in-one, but a bundle with a monitor and keyboard, mouse. I've replaced the keyboard. The keyboard came with it was nasty, clunky, too big. Keys weren't spaced right. This is perfect for me now. This keyboard. Pardon me. It cost over £30, but it's worth it to get a nice keyboard that is usable now. What else is happening? Nothing really happening down on social media. I will be uploading this onto YouTube again. And as with all my YouTube videos, they are now uploaded in, I think, 38, 39 languages, subtitles. And that takes a fair bit as well. Not doing the translation, but getting the English correct enough that the translation makes sense. I have to go through the translations, the English basically, and take out all the apostrophes. So where I've said it's, I have to take that out and put it is. And all the contractions. Just so it makes it easier for the translation to get it more accurate. Because it can get a bit confused with, well, contractions. Apostrophes in foreign languages don't always translate very well. So I have to break it down into that. I try to make it as sensible as I can. So there we are. As I said, I've got these books to go through one by one. I'll be doing Living with Asperger's as the first one. So I'll put that on top. And that'll be on Friday, probably at 8 o'clock. I won't do the 7 o'clock one. I'll do the 8 till 9. And then from 9 to 11-ish, I normally do 2 hours of karaoke. Or just general chat. Depends if people come in on the stream. It's normally on POF. POF and Scout, I do karaoke for a couple of hours after my streams here. So I'm going to love you and leave you. That's my 1 hour done. Let me get the stream back. And I will speak to you again on Friday. Thank you for watching. I do hope everyone has a good rest of the week. And I shall see you soon. Thank you very much.